Hi there, welcome to the Fierce Factor podcast. I'm your host, Kaylee Lindholm. And I think it's time for us women to shift the conversation in business and step into our feminine leadership to do the most iconic work the aesthetic industry has ever seen. Each week, I'll be bringing a powerful dose of strategy, sarcasm, solutions, and sass that will rev up your creativity and ignite your brilliance as you link arms with me along our shared path of personal and professional growth in 20 minutes or less. Let's go. Hello, leader. Thank you for tuning in to this week's Fierce Factor podcast episode. I am recording from the road again this week. Actually, I'm stationed out here in Florida for a few days, and I must say it does feel good to be able to do my very best work from really anywhere in the world. And this was one of the key goals for my life when I started my business. I didn't want to be tied down to showing up to one location to make money. And it's one of those things where I get to take a moment to reflect, to recognize, and to feel gratitude for where I am. And last week, I was in Dallas for the Aesthetic Next conference, and I must say I was really impressed with how well done this year's show was. Not to mention, it must have doubled in size from last year. So pulling off a solid event with such rapid growth is no small feat, I must say. One of the talks I was really looking forward to seeing was actually in the esthetician track, and it was a talk around imposter syndrome. And so I want to give credit to Ashley Melcher, who delivered the talk. I was really inspired by what she talked about, her experience with imposter syndrome. And so I decided to actually bring some of these ideas and some of my own experiences to you today in the form of this podcast episode. So I've made mention of this syndrome in the past. It's a feeling that we have achieved something that we don't deserve, that we'll be found out, or that we're unqualified, or will be revealed as a fraud, right? And I think this topic is so vital, as this syndrome happens to be a challenge that our coaching programs really address at KLC. Through our coaching, we help women who believe in empowerment truly become empowered to step into the role as the CEO, as the woman who is capable of achieving the very goals she sets for herself. Have you ever had a moment where you feel like, how in the world am I actually doing this? Do you ever feel like all of your accomplishments can be due to luck or your network or your resources or your parents? Do you ever feel like you're going to be discovered as a fraud, that you don't know what you're doing or you're going to be figured out? Do you feel like everyone else around you knows more than you? You're not alone if you've experienced some of these feelings. We had a client recently who was invited to speak on stage at a big conference, and she was asked to talk about her business model and growth strategy. And she immediately called me and said, Kaylee, I am not qualified to speak at this conference. I've only been injecting for a few years. And I had to remind her that she was growing her business and she was the official expert on that topic. Her years of experience doing what she does has zero impact on her ability to share her story. And in fact, it's the milestones of achievement that had happened in only 4 years that I think gave her more credibility to share her path to achieving that success. Something I've noticed about imposter syndrome is that it's very sneaky. It's like a little tiny voice that's so subtle, and it really makes you believe that it's protecting you. I was putting up my booth at Aesthetic Next this weekend, and I popped up a banner, and I turned around and looked at it, and my face was splashed all over it, and my heart just like suddenly dropped. Like, it was crazy. It was this surreal feeling. Here I was standing adjacent to the huge Evolus booth with the big feathered angel wings. And here I am trying to act like I had something of value to bring. I felt like a huge imposter. I spent 10 years grinding at trade shows until my feet fell off and I lost my voice. And I was doing that for someone else. And now this was my turn to show up, and my little imposter syndrome voice was saying, Kaylee, you're trying to become a real business. That's cute. And I literally had to coach myself through this process. And in this episode, I want to talk about imposter syndrome and some of the ways that I helped myself believe that I am worthy of showing up the way I know I can, and to really help you spot the signs that you are being held back by this limiting belief that you're an imposter. To sum it up, imposter syndrome really is a cognitive dissonance between what other people will say about you and what you will say about yourself. So you might say something like, I know rationally that I'm qualified, but I feel like I'm not. The underlying truth of imposter syndrome is about you feeling unworthy or not good enough in some way. It doesn't really make sense, and it can be hard to wrap your brain around. It truly feels like there's no connection between what other people see about you and what you see about yourself, and this can be a real mind freak. Before we talk about how to cure imposter syndrome, I just think it's important to talk about where imposter syndrome comes from. Imposter syndrome is really a form of your own self-talk, right? Through various habits of conditional thinking and thought patterns that you tell yourself that you're not good enough or that you constantly need to achieve more. It's the feeling that because it's easy, you must not be good at it. It's social, cultural, and family conditioning that tells you that you're inferior or you should be doubting yourself. And this social conditioning gets inside our head and it presents itself like our own thoughts. If you're a woman in our society, you're constantly encouraged to second guess yourself, to criticize yourself. You're supposed to check and double check your work. You're told you should be able to stand up for yourself, but when you do, you're a bitch. You're told your appearance matters, but if it matters too much, you're vain. You're told you're smart and ambitious, but that men won't want to be with you if you are. There's no way to win. If you're raised to value yourself based on your accomplishments, which I know many of you are, if you're like me, it will be natural to become fixated on asking yourself whether you are good enough, smart enough, and worthy enough. And then even more terrifying to think that you might find out later that you're not as good or as smart as you thought. And even if you don't observe or identify with these messages, you'll most certainly deal with the people around you who will support you to a point at which your success doesn't expose their own insecurities and vulnerabilities, a point at which the ceiling for which they believe they're capable of achieving appears right in front of them. And this, quite frankly, has nothing to do with you. But in a time in human history where facades dominate authenticity, we get stuck in the comparison trap. And it's not always a competition thing. Sometimes we really look up to or admire someone and end up striving to be just like them in so many ways that we begin to lose ourselves and we truly do become an imposter. The best way to overcome imposter syndrome is to just look inside for intrinsic versus external validation. And here are a few ways to do this. First of all, dispute your negative thoughts. So for every negative thought that pops into your head, list 3 positive thoughts to counter that negative thought. For example, I might say to myself, I don't deserve to speak about boundaries on stage. I'm not an expert or a professional speaker. And so I'd write that down, and then branching off from that, I'd counter that argument with the following positive, factual affirmations. Number 1, I'm more than qualified to give this talk because I've had to learn and implement these specific tools as I've developed firm boundaries in my own business to protect myself and my priorities. And then I might write down number 2, I've been speaking in front of audiences for 10 years and independently developing and delivering live curriculum for the past 5 years. And then finally, point 3, I have a community of women who are counting on me to help them empower themselves with these tools. So you can see just reinforcing this positive thinking will help you shut down that irritating little voice in your head that tells you you're not ready or capable enough. Another strategy is to just consistently track and celebrate your wins. When I think back to not too long ago, I had 0 prospects on my email list. I had 0 clients, 0 system for generating leads, and $0 in my bank account. And look at me now, right? We have to remember where we started and celebrate even the small wins. When I got home from the Aesthetic Next conference, I grabbed a glass of champagne with my girlfriend and we celebrated the fact that I had survived another conference, right? You can celebrate any small wins, your highest sales month, hiring a new employee, getting recognized in your community. All of these small wins are the fuel to generate massive impact, and you should not only recognize them, but reward yourself for them as well. And a final strategy I'll share with you is visualization. Close your eyes and really imagine the woman you are becoming. Envision yourself at that next level and be specific. One of our Academy clients talks about how she manifested in some ways her new location. She would close her eyes and imagine she was in a new space with dream employees, a high vibe workspace with appreciative and cooperative clients. She could visualize the fragrance of the office all the way down to the type of soap that would be in the bathrooms. Our brains often have a tough time distinguishing between reality and imagination, which is why imposter syndrome is a real thing in the first place. So train your brain to believe that you've already made it. Leader, remember that we are all works in progress. Remind yourself of this. There's no end game to our journey while we're here on earth. And I believe that God has given each of us a gift, and it's up to us to activate that gift. You are made to do big things. Let yourself go there. Let yourself dream bigger. Give yourself permission to achieve bigger and better. I have found that one of the most difficult things to grasp in life is the role that we have had in our own success. But I can assure you that if you truly work to believe in yourself and the authentic impact you are making on this planet, you will break through limiting barriers and overcome false mind games that make you feel like an imposter. You can do this. Okay, leader, thank you for listening. I hope this episode has been helpful. Please share with someone who can benefit from hearing this message. And I will chat with you same place, same time next week. See you soon, Goddess. Wait, before you go, hey, if you're vibing with this conversation and you want to join me on my mission to help 100 inspiring and intentional women cross the next $1 million milestone in their business this year, or leader, maybe you want to become one of them, head over to Facebook and join our free community, the Fierce Factor Society. Over there, we're taking this conversation to an elevated level. Get access to resource guides, podcast supplements, guideposts, and direct communication with me, my expert team, and of course, a society of fierce women making big moves and disrupting the status quo in aesthetic wellness. You can link directly through the show notes or head to Facebook and search the Fierce Factor Society. See you there, Goddess.